Welcome back to another look at Battlefield 1. I'm John, and this time we have the console versions of the game in-house and ready to roll. DICE has made great strides with its Frostbite engine on consoles this generation, but we haven't seen the team tackle a large-scale 64-player game since launch. So how is the game running at this point? Let's get right to it. As you can see, during large-scale matches, both versions struggle to hit the target frame rate right now. We're looking at PS4 first here, and the frame rate is almost always under 60 frames per second during normal gameplay. It is still very playable, of course, but there is certainly plenty of room to improve here in the final version. Jumping over to Xbox One, we see similar results here as well, with dips under 60 FPS during normal gameplay, but at least in this match, the average frame rate does feel a tad higher. So what's happening here? I think there are two things to keep in mind. First and foremost, DICE games have a history of improving dramatically from pre-release to final. Games often undergo optimization late in development, but the improvements evident in DICE games in particular are more significant than your average title. You can see that here with Star Wars Battlefront from last E3, struggling to hit the target frame rate, but in the final build, performance is nearly locked at 60 frames per second. Will we see the same leap in performance with Battlefield 1? Well, we'll have to wait and see, but I still have some concerns. These shooters with 64 active players and lots of destruction are a huge strain on the CPU. If you look back at Battlefield 4 or Hardline, which, by the way, wasn't actually a DICE game, but used the same engine, you can actually see that the large-scale battles really struggled on both consoles. There is a precedent here. Realistically though, we're hoping for a boost by launch, but due to the player count and destruction, the game may not run as well as last year's Battlefront. We'll certainly keep an eye on it as the release date draws nearer. Jumping over to Domination, which is limited to 24 players with no vehicles, we see that performance is no longer an issue, and this is true for both consoles. We see a mostly rock-solid 60 frames per second experience here across the board, and it feels very smooth indeed to play. As far as image quality is concerned, Battlefield 1 also shares the same basic setup as other recent DICE games. We've got 900p over here on PlayStation 4 and 720p on the Xbox One. In both cases, the game has a softer appearance in comparison to the PC version running on a powerful PC, of course, but thanks to the inclusion of temporal anti-aliasing, the game is at least reasonably clean, especially compared to Battlefield 4. It is just a bit soft, really, and if you're playing on a TV at a decent view distance, it will still look quite good. But how does it actually stack up against the PC version in terms of settings? Well, here's what we're seeing when comparing the consoles against the various presets available on the PC. The most noticeable differences stem from the distant LODs, grass rendering, and the texture filtering. Distant detail is reduced on consoles and seems to vary between medium on the Domination map to below the lowest setting on the PC in Conquest. Fortunately, the game still manages to look good at all settings and is quite scalable. You get the improved anti-aliasing, displacement mapping, better post effects, and ambient occlusion of the higher PC settings on consoles at the expense of distant detail, but the whole thing still manages to come together quite well. One thing we have to mention on the PC side, we recently discussed the inclusion of DirectX 12, and while it's clear that DX12 is certainly in the cards, otherwise it wouldn't be in the options menu at all, right? In its current form, the toggle switch doesn't actually work. On our Windows 10 PC here, the game runs in DirectX 11 mode regardless of the position of the switch. It's also nice to see the old battle log system eliminated from the game. We know that Battlefield 4 has been patched recently with this new UI, and it will be coming to Hardline as well. Basically, it eliminates the web browser interface used in previous games and enables players to join servers from within the game itself, which is rather convenient. So that's really where we're at right now. The visual makeup of the game is very similar to Battlefront and previous Battlefield games. The expected sacrifices are all in play, but the game still looks good on all platforms. The real key here is performance. We'll be eager to see how the game runs in its final form, as there is clearly a lot of work to be done. We expect to see improvements, as is consistent with DICE's other work, but with the higher player counts and inclusion of destruction, it does seem like a tall order. Anyways, that's all for now. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe, and until next time, this is John, signing off.